Spanish 1, Week 7. The first thing we do when the children come to class is have the chairs against the walls to minimize cheating and have their quizzes out on the chairs so they can go ahead and start and get that over with. It usually takes about 12 minutes when we get to class. And then the next thing is the conversation, la conversación. Each week we add something new to the conversation. So this week, our new item is basically saying, nice to meet you. And you're basically saying, with much pleasure. And then the response is equally, or same here. And so that would be, mucho gusto, igualmente. So our conversation, we take turns and everyone has a partner and they say the conversation back and forth. One's blue, one's green. And so this conversation goes like this. Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo estás? Bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? Bien. Me llamo Señora Ruby. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Señora Rosa. ¿Cuántos años tienes? Tengo 14 años. ¿Y tú? Tengo 15 años. Mucho gusto. Igualmente. Ciao. Ciao. And then we will move to practicing our vocabulary. And that is done with the partner, whoever you said your conversation with. And so they go back and forth saying the English and the Spanish for their vocabulary for that week to practice for their oral quiz. Then before we take the oral quiz, we review the alphabet because that is the second part of the oral quiz. And we just go around the room, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And then we move on to the oral quiz. If there are any children that earn the privilege of being with our Spanish speaker in the hallway, then this is the point where they will go out there. If for some reason we don't have a Spanish speaker for the day, I still send them out in the hallway and they take a deck of cards. I encourage them to use Spanish. Sometimes it happens. Then for the oral quiz, I turn to the back of the vocab sheets and use this list. I usually pick one or two words from each section to do their oral quiz. And I give their oral quiz in Spanish and they write down the English. I do that for 10 questions. And then the last 10 questions will be the alphabet. And then they trade with their neighbors to do the grading. And they put how many they got top at the right, how many they got right at the top. And then they circle that. And they also circle their own name as the grader so that if I have questions, I can go back and ask them. Then our friends rejoin us back in class. We actually usually do food here as well as we move on to our next sections. For the Spanish one, we move on to phonics. And so each week we add a new phonic. And so for week 7, it's ña. And so we just say it all together. Ña, ñi, ni, ño, ñu. And then we go up the list. Ya, ye, yi, yo, you, ha, he, he, ho, hu, a, e, I, o, u, ga, ge, gi, go, gu, ga, he, he, go, gu, ka, se, si, ko, ku. And I do a little bit more phonics with the Spanish one because I'm teaching them also how to do syllables. And so for today, we're talking about strong vowels versus weak vowels. So in Spanish, if you have a weak vowel, which is an I or a U, and it's combined with another vowel, then it becomes one syllable. And so you still say them separately, but you kind of run them together. And so the 100 is cien. And so even though you can hear that I in there, that is considered one syllable. And then, of course, seis, siete, cuatro, nueve. The next thing we do is read the Bible. And normally I replace some words that they will understand in context with Spanish. So, un hot día, Abraham was resting near his garba. He heard footsteps. Tres hombres were standing nearby. Abraham went out to greet them. Would you like to rest in the shade? We have plenty of cool agua to beber. Can I get you something to comer? Abraham told Sarah about the visitas. He asked her to make them a meal to comer. While they were eating, the tres visitas shared some exciting news. They said, your esposa is going to have an hijo. Sarah heard what they said. She laughed, thinking, ay, tu viejo. Dios asked Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Anything is posible with el Señor. Sure enough, the next año, Sarah had a baby boy, un bebé. They named him Isaac. And then at the end of the stories, I usually tell something about the story because most of the children are familiar with these Bible stories. And so I also shared with them that 12 or 13 years later, God then asked Abraham to sacrifice this baby boy. And not only was he willing to do that, the scriptures tell us that Isaac, when they came to the sacrifice, was willing to be sacrificed. And it's a faith that some of us just can't fathom. Then the next thing we do is the lessons. Some lessons are longer than others. This week is another long list of verbs that they're memorizing. And so we, for this week, are focusing on a very common verb. And we usually even use it in a game. So tocar means to touch, but it also can be used in so many different ways. So one of the ways it's used is to play music. And so if you are playing the piano, you're actually touching the piano. Or if you're honking a car horn, if you're ringing a doorbell, or even a whistle, anything that's like a loud noise that you're causing, you're touching the doorbell, or you're touching the steering wheel, and it means that you're making a noise. And then one of the ways we use this in the game is we also use it to say it's your turn. So your turn touches you. And so when we're doing cards, you can say te toca, and that means it's your turn. And then if there's something you have to do, like you have to study or you have to wash the dishes, well, to wash the dishes touches you. And then if you want the last piece of pizza, then that can touch you as well. And one at the end I thought was so funny. If you win the lottery touches you. Then we have our presentations. Usually we only have one, but every once in a while there are 2 in 1 week. And last but not least, we would play a game. And for this week, it would be nice to do some kind of card game in which the children are practicing te toca or me toca for it's my turn.